Small quill or big quill, it's about how you use it. Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to the Games Cage. Today, and only today, we are here to talk about, that's right, a fun one I wanted to do for a while, and that is Sonic versus Shadow. But not in the typical way you would think, who's sure, blah, 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 but who is the coolest character? Who is the cooler one amongst the two? Because I was thinking about this, I was like, damn, that's actually a hard question, because yes, Shadow is easily the one that's, you know, perceived as the edgy, cool one, but Sonic has always been cool just by his embodiment. So I figured I would sit here today and debate different aspects of the character to choose, in my opinion, what I think is the coolest one out of the two of them. And I'm gonna do like a point system internally. Like the things I think I've got written down for this are: one, their design, right? Two, their story, you know, their stories slash motives so far, their personality, their actions, and their relationships. Let's start with their designs, right? Obviously, both of these have pretty iconic designs amongst anyone who plays video games. You see these people, you know what they are, right? But there's a debate between both of them. When it comes to Sonic, right, you have the classic Sonic look, you know, little short dude with the spikes, always got a cool attitude. Of course, you got modern Sonic, you know, the longer legs, the longer quills, depending on the game. But you also have just a design that has always been iconic in a lot of ways, right? The look of Sonic is unlike any other character. Yeah, you have the uni eye, which, you know, you learn to get used to after you grow up with it. But Sonic has always looked cool, and has always looked cool in motion, which is why the character, I feel like, has stood out so long, right? And I feel like that's what made Sonic always stand out even in the 90s, right? It was that Sonic's design was cool, right? Whereas Mario and Mickey and a lot of mascot characters were aiming for a cute look, Sonic definitely was able to do this unique form where he looked cool, right? But he was also cute. You know, he had a bit of those two factors. And when you think of modern Sonic, yeah, you might not think of him as cute. Some people would, but he is cool, right? And for the most part, like the spiky quills are cool. The way his eyes can move around sometimes are really cool. The way he looks, the way he moves are really dope. Now, could you argue that his shoes maybe sometimes could look a little goofy, you know, or the big gloves are a little silly depending on renders you look at? Yeah, but in game, in motion, he pretty much looks cool throughout most of the series. But we also do have to factor in here Shadow the Hedgehog's design. Obviously meant to be the opposite of Sonic, and while he could have just been a red character, because often you have that contrast of blue and red, they went with an even sicker design scheme for Shadow, and that is black and red. The look of Shadow, I think, is phenomenal, right? The way his quills are even shaped differently from Sonic, I think, was something so cool, because they really could have made it so that Shadow is just, you know, a dark and red Sonic. And what makes Shadow stand out so much is, yeah, when you look at him, you know right away he is also a Sonic character, but he stands out so much. I mean, his shoes look sick, obviously. I think his shoes look cooler than Sonic's, really, when I think about it, right? The air rocket booster look that he's got to them, you know, the skating thing. We'll talk about how their actions are and how they move in game, but I will say on a design factor, he also has that little fur pouch in the front of him, which I think, you know, depending on who you ask, could look silly, but I think it looks cooler than him just having the same sort of stomach look as Sonic. I think his gloves are super dope. Obviously, he's got the inhibitor rings, which are extremely a cool little look. You know, you have the rings that are iconic to Sonic, just built on. I don't know, I feel like when it comes to Shadow the Hedgehog's design, what was always cool about it is they've even refused to make a classic Shadow. You know, I think they really do believe in the idea that Shadow is always meant to look cool and raw, because there's many times they could have just shoehorned a classic Shadow in there. I'm sure it's been R&D'd once or twice, but Shadow will always remain raw and sick in design. And I think that's why when it comes to design, I'm going to give Shadow the point for cool, right? If we were talking about like what's purely just the most cute and cool and flexible and perfect design, I think I would go with Sonic. But I think if we're just putting on pure cool factor here, Shadow is literally designed to look cool and appeal to cool. You know, the black and red works on merch, it works on people, it's appealing on the eyes. A lot of people just associate that color with cool, and his look just is awesome. And even the way his quills look, it's just, he looks cool, man. But we can't forget what makes a character cool is not just how they look, but how they are and how they act. And I just want to start with each character's story, right? Because this is where we get, again, more arguable territory, right? Let's start with Shadow this time around, because he won the point on the first time. Shadow the Hedgehog's story, I would argue, is the more clear one, right? Where with Sonic, we have, you know, some loose backstory. It's more clear what his life is. But with Shadow, right, we have his entire story, right? I mean, literally from his existence, he is meant to be a cure. You know, he's come to be a cure for the world, right? He's this stoic character, and in his story has always been so interesting because he's this character who wanted to live a life on Earth with his best friend, right? And that was robbed from him, right? That was taken away from him from the beginning of his life, very early on in his life. Obviously, you know, he was an experiment. And that messed him up forever. Like to this day, we have the ramifications of Maria's death onto Shadow, because on the arc, Shadow was like more happy. You know, I'm not saying he was out here smiling, but you could even see, you know, from the preview we have for Dark Beginnings, just how Shadow deeply cared for Maria and wanted to protect her. And you saw how relaxed and calm he was with her. Like that was not a Shadow that we've ever really seen. And so you can see to this day, when he was freed from being trapped for 50 years after everything went down, right, from Dr. Eggman, he is born cool and he is born jaded, right? And he feels hurt from what happened and he wants to destroy, right? But then again, as time has gone on and as Maria's wish is remembered for him, you know, and he's reminded about Maria's wish, the dude's like, you know what, man, like, I need to protect this planet as she wanted, right? And while Shadow will never necessarily care about specific people, he wants to live on his own, I think he does feel some duty to protect the world and protect Maria's wish. And I think that's awesome, right? And I think that's always been what's made Shadow so cool, is not only is he cool in the way he acts, right, and how he is with characters, because he even is willing to open up to other people. You know, he has Team Dark working with him. You know, he's worked with Sonic when he needs to. Like, he's a character that isn't just edgy or angry for edgy's sake. I think he's a character with a great story, you know, and he's someone that's been through it. Now, could you argue that a bit of that cool factor is lost in a game like Shadow the Hedgehog, where the paths you take are completely different? Sure, but even route by route, I still think Shadow remains consistently cool, not just in his dialogue, right, the shit he's able to say, but his actions. And we'll get to their actions in a point or two. But yeah, just for life story wise, I feel like this is where Shadow might end up having an advantage, right, because he does have a clear story timeline that's gone from A to Z, whereas when we get to our boy right here, Mr. Sonic the Hedgehog, he has a very different story, right? While his origins are very, I'm not saying they're not clear. It's more, when it comes to Sonic, he was just around. You know, he was just born. He's here. You know, he, from an early time in his life, knew to run fast and save the day from Dr. Eggman. I think Sonic's story is a pretty clear one. You could argue, obviously, every game is his story and how he's been growing and evolving as a character, right, and making friends with the world. I think when it comes to Sonic, he shines a bit more in his personality and less in necessarily his story, because Sonic doesn't really have a character arc, right? You can argue, you know, in Sonic X that, you know, he grows to enjoy his time more on Earth, and, you know, he tries to help out his friends, and he's gone through missions, you know, he's gone through storybook journeys and Black Knight journeys, and he's become the Knight of the Wind, and he's gotten many titles of savior. I think though with Sonic, he doesn't really have this tragic backstory. Not that he even needs it, but he doesn't necessarily have a backstory, right? And you could argue the movies are in the middle of doing that right now, giving him the story of how he's come to Earth and how he's, you know, learning to grow up on the planet and understand his powers and the people he wants to protect. I think Sonic is someone who very much knows his purpose and just wants to live to just have a sense of freedom, have a sense of joy, take care of the people around him. But he's a very relaxed and cool character in a lot of ways, even when he can be cocky. And that's when we'll get to the personality next. But when it comes to the backstory, I am going to have to go and give a Shadow another point here. So it's 2-0 right now for Shadow, but things could run back in the next aspect, which is these characters' personalities. Now, because Shadow won the round last time, I'm going to start off with him again. You all know how Shadow is. Now, I actually want to do something different here. There was the Fast Friends Forever campaign that happened last year, and we got an official description of the character's personality. So I'm going to read that off before I sort of give my thoughts on them. So let's read this. So Shadow is known as the ultimate life form. He was created by Professor Gerald Robotnik as a part of a complex lawless conspiracy involving the military and some ravenous aliens. Shadow has incredible speed, ferocious strength, and a rare ability called Chaos Control. By utilizing the power of Chaos Control, he can stop time and appear to warp to new positions instantaneously. Shadow is always on the prowl for dangers to the world. While he has no love for it or its people, they were cherished by his one friend, the late Maria Dr. Robotnik. He protects the Earth in honor of her memory, willing to do anything and fight anyone to ensure no one threatens the world Maria cherished. While Shadow prefers to be alone, he allows himself to trust in the occasional support of Rouge, Omega, and they were the only ones that he can count on for help that won't question his methods, right? So that's the official description of Shadow's personality, but obviously from a fan perspective on me, listen, Shadow is the cool one, right? I mean, his whole idea is, being stoic, being quiet, saying few words. He speaks when he needs to, but his personality is really cool. He can be very angry at times. He can be very relaxed. Like, he does have a wide range of emotions. I will say it's very rare for you to get a happy Shadow moment. Like, it's very rare that you crack a smile out of him, just because he really does live with a specific purpose, right? He is here on a mission. He just wants to do his mission. While, he can live day to day and have some fun. There's been some official art from Sonic Chan. Like, there's this one that I really love where Shadow is holding this coffee and walking outside, and he sees like a shoe that resembles Maria's. And I feel like there's some part of Shadow that wants to live a normal life, but his personality definitely lends him to be a bit more stoic, but he can be really cool and obviously poking fun a lot of times. We saw that in Sonic Prime, how Shadow's character shines out a lot in his personality, right? The way he responds to Sonic, the way he can be witty, the way he can't really tolerate the guy, right? The guy wants to be around people for the most part that understand his energy, but he can coexist and work with them. And there's gonna be where I think Sonic, in my opinion, is gonna take a point, and that is for me Sonic's personality. Sonic's personality for me has always been why I adore this series and why I love this franchise, right? He's a character that can be cocky, right? But he's a character that can also be funny. He's a character that can also be silly. He's a character that can always be brave, right? He's a character that can even be lazy at times. He can even get mad sometimes. I think Sonic has had an incredible range of emotions over the years, right? And while people have argued different portrayals of the character and how he handles situations, I think at the end of the day, Sonic's personality is somebody who wants to protect, right? But he also is not just going to, go like be the goody in a situation, right? We've seen in a story like Black Knight where he doesn't care if he's the bad guy in that world for getting rid of a supposed king for being evil. If he's just gonna do the right thing, he is always going to do the right thing if it means he's not gonna be the hero at the end of the day, right? He has his own values, and come on, man, Sonic's personality, obviously you could argue there's the bad portrayals where it's just, oh man, chili dogs, let's go, let's do this, right? But at his core, when Sonic is the coolest, he's a character that can be incredibly relaxed while being incredibly snarky, while being extremely funny. Like, I think Sonic just does it for me in terms of like smiling through the pain and always making sure everyone around him feels safe and happy. That smile of his, that perseverance is what makes him, and that's why I'm going to give Sonic the point here when it comes to personality. We also gotta talk about what makes a character in fiction cool, especially as shown in anime like series, and that is their actions and their moves. Now, let's start with our boy Sonic, since he got the previous point. Sonic, I think, has a home field advantage here, just because he's just done a lot more, right? Between his spin dash, between obviously the aspect of him going super fast, that alone has always been so standout. So I think what I love about Sonic is they never played his speed as just, he warps back and forth and you don't see it. You've always been able to experience Sonic's speed and see how fast he's able to go through the games, right? They've done an incredible job of getting you to see and understand Sonic's level of speed. And I think beyond that, right, you have a character that not only has had a super form, right, but multiple super forms, right, between Dark Spine Sonic, between Super Sonic 2, between Excalibur Sonic. Like, this is a character that has had Dark Sonic, Werehog Sonic. Like, this is a character whose actions and movesets have varied so much over the years, right? Even from the combat set that he's got in Sonic Frontiers, where he's doing these crazy moves. He's sliced a Titan in half. He has fought gods. Like, Sonic has been through the gauntlet of moves and attacks over here, and he's just always been cool as shit for. Like, are you kidding me with the guy? Like, you all know this. And this is what I mean when I say, when it comes to Sonic here, he might have a home field advantage just because he's been through a lot more. And while, yeah, at his core, it is homing attacks and spin dashes, he has just done a lot of cool shit and had a lot more cool set pieces and moments. But let's not forget my boy Shadow the Hedgehog over here has well the gun, right? I mean, you look at that Shadow the Hedgehog intro alone, and it has fueled AMVs and moments to this day. We're talking about a guy who's able to teleport, you know, who's able to use chaos control, who's able to destroy everything around him, who's shot motherfuckers up all around them. Bro, the guy uses hover shoes, right, where he's skating around and it looks cool as shit whenever you do it, right? You've had a character who's removed his inhibitor rings, going through a horde of enemies. Like, no doubt Shadow the Hedgehog has been cool, right? He's had 2 to 3 notable Super Shadow fights against Devil Doom that's been raw as hell. You've had the one obviously in Sonic Adventure 2. Like, Shadow the Hedgehog is cool as shit, and the idea of being able to teleport with a Chaos Emerald is awesome. You have a dude who also, you know, just likes to roundhouse kick people. He's done it to Silver. He's done it to Tails before. Like, he kicks the shit out of Knuckles and Sonic X. Like, this guy is scrapping. I think that's what I love about Shadow's moveset. Is Shadow's not afraid to get dirty, right? He will win the fight no matter what it takes. He's not going to have a sense of pride of how I beat you. He's just like, I'm going to win, right? If I got to use a gun, if I got to use my emerald, if I got to use whatever, I am here to kick your ass and win. But like I said, at the end of the day, for me, when it comes to actions, Sonic just has an advantage for me just because he's been able to do a lot more cooler shit. I mean, I feel like I could just present to you the Sonic Unleashed opening alone, and all the sauce Sonic has as a character is displayed there. And I think we'll get to a point one day where Shadow's there once we have Shadow Generations and Dark Beginnings fully done and Movie 3. But for now, I'm going to give the point to Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, one more aspect I wanted to tackle before I actually get into your comments and points is the relationships, right? The characters' relationships, I feel like with other characters, is a big part of what makes a character enjoyable or not, right? Like how they treat others, how they are around others, especially when it comes to shonen and anime, right? That's such a big part of what makes a character who they are, right? How they treat others around them. And let's start with Sonic because he won this point. Sonic has always been a symbol of hope and sometimes an anomaly to a lot of characters, right? You have characters like Rouge that respect the guy even if they're not really close friends. And I feel like that's the biggest thing that Sonic has, is Sonic has a lot of respect from people that don't even like him. I mean, you've even had Eggman and Sonic Frontiers telling Sonic that, like, he doesn't, you know, have to respect the guy, but he doesn't even like the guy, but he sure as hell can respect him, right? And that's the biggest factor the character has. He's also been a symbol of hope to Tails, right? Tails has always looked up to Sonic and wanted to be like Sonic growing up. You know, you've even had Amy, who obviously is in love with the guy, but also, you know, respects how he's always wanted to save the day and go about his life. I think Sonic, in a lot of ways, wants to be alone sometimes, you know, while he likes his friends. I think, you know, you have the iterations of Sonic Prime where he likes being around others. I don't think Sonic minds really isolating or just being on his own sometimes. In fact, you've seen times where he's gotten annoyed from others around him, just like in Sonic X or even Sonic the OVA, right, where he tells Tails, shut up, Tails. Like, the guy wants to chill alone. But I do think a lot of characters respect him. He's the type of character that people could not see in that universe for years, and when they see him again, they're like, hey, how you been? Like, what you been up to? Because they trust him and respect the character. I think for me, that really is cool. Now, Shadow, though, puts up a hard bargain because he's a character that I think even Sonic finds really cool, right? When you think about his relationship, even with a character like Sonic, you have Sonic wanting, you know, to, you know, just open him up a little bit, you know what I'm saying? Get his personality down. He's always respected him. He even talks about that in one of the latest Tails Tube video, where he's just talking about, like, hey, yeah, we've got to work together, and I really do respect you in a lot of ways. And I think that's a commendable thing on his own, right? And I think Shadow's friends are also really good about understanding him and caring about him. Like, Rouge and Omega are kind of incredible in a lot of ways for dealing with him. You don't see them get really sassy with Shadow. They think they just really understand him, especially when you think about Omega, how he's just a robot, but he will stick by Shadow. And you have Rouge, who I think she's a perfect match for him in a lot of ways, because I think Rouge is the type of character that, while she might really enjoy being around him, I don't think she would ever try to fall in love with him or pursue him, because I think she just respects him a lot and understands his boundaries and how he is. Like, he's got really cool relationships, but there are characters that don't necessarily really interact with or fuck with Shadow like that. You know, you don't really have Tails' dynamic with Shadow. You don't really have... Eggman doesn't really like Shadow all that much, I don't think, nowadays. I mean, there's some moments where he still tries to use him or battle him, but even Knuckles, right? I think Knuckles can somewhat respect Shadow, but they definitely have, you know, a bit of conflict amongst them. And I think that's the big difference, right, between the two, is Shadow is a character that nowadays people, I think, respect a little more, because it's not like he's going around causing problems, right? But he's definitely not a character that wants to spend time with others. He'll kind of chill in the corner next to a tree, a lot of ways like Vegeta. And while there are characters that truly respect him and love him, I do think when it comes to relationships with others, Sonic has a bit of the edge on the cool factor. And that's why for me, it is going to go 3 points for Sonic, 2 points for Shadow, making, for me at least, Sonic the cooler character. But we do have one more bonus factor in here that I wanted to put up, which is the people's opinion. Over 2,000 of you voted and did say that, in your opinion, Shadow the Hedgehog is the cooler one. So if I was factoring you guys in, this shit would be a tie. And I was looking at a lot of the replies. There's nothing too crazy, but just, you know, one of them is the Edge. Even with his name, I gotta go with it, bro. You know, we already know. Shit, I can't choose, but come on, bro. One of them's got the motorbike and everything. You know what I'm saying? But one guy got a Glock in his Rari. I mean, how did I not even talk about the Glock in his Rari? But Sonic may be a role model to me, and the closest I have not to ideal here, but Shadow's probably my favorite character in fiction. Some people say Knuckles, but yeah, a lot of Shadow shooters up in the replies and stories here. So if you were to factor you guys in, Shadow would tie this up. So we really don't know who the coolest one is, but let me know, of course, in the comment section below, what is your winning choice, and tell me in each story, in each aspect, which character you would give the point. All right, I love you guys. Thank you all for watching. You're the best, and of course, I'll see you all next time. Peace out.